Thank you for listening to Fem Talk 89 FM, and we welcome viewers on My TV as you tune in to Femlink Pacific's Radio with Pictures, coming to you live from Femlink Pacific's office at the St. Thomas Anglican Church compound here in Labasa. It's all part of our 10th anniversary celebration. Fem Talk 89 FM was launched on May 5th, 2004, and our very first broadcast was on May 25th, 2004, as part of the commemoration of the International Women's Day for Peace and Disarmament, with our first group of student volunteers. Since then, Femtalk 89 FM, or our suitcase radio station, has traveled around Fiji. And since November 2011, we have had our very own Femtalk 89 FM in Labasa, where we broadcast from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. throughout the week. 2 weeks ago, Femtalk 89 FM Radio with Pictures was in Nandi with Idaho, and we continued our 10th anniversary celebration in Nausori last week, where we also broadcasted live from the Delkusha Church. So welcome to Femlink Pacific's Labasa Community Media Center, where we are broadcasting from today. The theme for our 10th anniversary campaign is Communicating Peace, Development, Diversity, Security, and Freedom. So let's join Sharon to introduce members of Femlink Pacific's 1025 network in Labasa.
Thank you, Lucille. Bulisia, and welcome to the final episode of Femlink Pacific series Radio with Pictures, commemorating the 10th anniversary of Fem Talk 89 FM. As you've journeyed with us from Nandi to Nausori and now here to Labasa, you've been hearing about the intersectionality between human rights and human development, and the collective development priorities of rural women leaders seen through the eyes of peace. We've also been reminded of the reality of discrimination and violence that still prevails in communities across Fiji. Today, once again, we'll hear from rural women leaders, and they will have their say about peace and development. First to Women's Weather Watch. Since 2009, Femlink Pacific's Women's Weather Watch reports have highlighted the experiences of women in rural communities during times of floods, cyclones, as well as drought. Women are communicating the link between climate change and intensifying natural disasters. They're also communicating strategies for food security and crop rehabilitation. In this segment, we're joined by Chotavini Vuanilotu from the Nangai Women's Club. Good morning, Chot.
Good morning, Sharon.
Tetha Kirasoni from the Bulileka Women's Club. How are you?
I'm fine, Sharon.
That's good. Joining us from the Vuniduidui Multiracial Women's Group is Suman Lata. Good morning, Suman.
Good morning, madam.
And last but not least, Salote Sabu, who is the secretary of the Tawake Women's Club. Good morning, Salote.
Good morning, Sharon.
Okay, I'm actually going to start with you, Salote, because you were talking about the furthest most tip of Vanuatu, Tawake. And one of the things that you said to us during our consultation was, we know the sea level is rising because the water during high tide is coming into our homes. Tell us, I mean, you're 56 years old now. What is the difference that you've experienced around climate change and the reality of sea level rising in your village?
Thank you, Sharon. I was born in Tawake. I'm from Tawake too. So as was I a child, from those years, before those years, it was an unforgettable experience for me. That the most enjoyable time that we having the bath and swimming in the sea, and the water was so clear and free from the rubbish. I mean, there's no floating rubbish like the plastic bags or seaweed or bottles around during that time. And also, when we go out fishing, myself, that was my hobby. Only for a short period, that I catch plenty fish, can I feed the family for more than 2 meals for doing the fishing. And also, in the village, we have plenty breadfruit trees, mango trees, bananas, and vegetables around our surroundings. during that time. And bear fruits, all the bear fruits, the same is for the season for bearing fruit. And, uh, and we don't know about the sea flood or expecting that type of what will be happening during that time.
So
And
how have you noticed the sea level rising? Is it because you have a seawall? I mean, you said it's coming into the homes. So how far are the homes from the beach? How far were the homes built back? Because you didn't anticipate the sea level rise. So what's the distance now?
because when I was doing my experience now, when after 30 years, so because my husband was working in the government, so we came home again and staying there, everything was changed. Eh? Everything was changed. All of the first row of the house, all was wiped off by the sea. And all the big trees was near to that houses, all gone.
So what year was that when you moved
That
back?
was 2009.
So from 2000, so in that period, most recently you've seen all of these changes
Yeah.
take place. So did you ask when did these houses get washed away? When did the trees all disappear? What was the information from the village?
I think there was a cyclone with Thomas.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, this was a very biggest. We got in tsunami or what like that. About 12 to 15 meters
Of
rise
waves,
of waves coming through.
So it was a combination also then of these natural disasters that helped,
Yes.
well, that contributed to the homes and the trees being washed away. Has it affected the crops? Were you planting, when you talk about the fruit trees and the breadfruit trees, were people planting around their homes? Have you had to move your food gardens?
It's affected mostly because we did no bear fruit for the mostly all the time, and it's not green. And I mean the flowers too around the houses, they are not good at all.
And that's because of the salt water?
Of salt water, many plenty of salt water.
Does the Tawake village have land to relocate to?
Tawake village located, if only we can walk from Tawake to Langi, that's Madwata side. Tawake is the Conrobe. Just take only 1 hour to cut that. So the land is very thin. It's very rocky, we are beside the rocky.
So is there much land to plant?
I think we can, yeah, big land to plant.
Okay. Have there been, I mean, in the village meetings, are you discussing these changes, these environmental changes that are taking place?
We are discussing when they take it up to the Mbose, but the government, I think the government, they can't do anything about grading of the, I mean, maybe the seawall like that, to prevent the.
Okay, we'll talk more about your recommendations a little
Okay.
later on. Thank you so much, Salote. Moving across to you, Chotibini, because Nangai is, you can walk here to our community center from the Nangai village settlement, right? Tell us about Nangai and what have been the experiences you faced, particularly during hurricanes, cyclones, or heavy rain for that matter?
Thank you, Sharon. In Nangai, it's about 1 kilometer from town. That means 10 to 20 minutes walk. And it's just a settlement outside Labasa town. In Nangai, there are 35 to 40 families living there, all from different parts of Vanua Levo, including Viti Levo. Just come there for educational purposes and employment.
So just to explain, when you say educational purposes, these are people moving from their traditional villages to settle into town to get their children to school.
That's right.
And
That's right.
to be able to find jobs then to pay for all those expenses.
Yes.
Okay.
Around Vanua Levu, there are people from Bua, from the Kaunrobe and around Madhuata living in Nangai for educational purposes, as I said before. We come here just to work, earn a living, and to cater for our children's education. That's all the purpose we come to
How has the village been developed? What's the infrastructure like, and what have been your experiences, for example, when it's heavy rain? Do you have to cross big creeks or rivers to get in and out of the Nangai village settlement?
Since 2002, we had a cyclone, big cyclone. That was the worst experience I ever come across in Nangai, because that was the biggest flood in Labasa. So that time we had no evacuation center. After that, we had our community hall. So we have to move to some double-story building around in town for evacuation center at that time. It was so difficult for us because the first time we have that flood, for mothers we have to keep around with our children, search for food and all those water. We had a cut off in water, electricity, there was no food. All our crops were damaged. Example, our cassava, vegetables, there was no food at all, no water at that time, about 2 to 3 months. We had everything had been cut off. So it's a big job for us as women, as mothers. We've been struggling around looking for food. There was no education, our children didn't come to school at that time. So we have to do our household. It's a burden to us.
I also know through our Women's Weather Watch reports that come in from our Labasa Community Media Center, even when there's heavy rain. So you've explained what happened during the cyclone, but every time there's heavy rain, either the children are not going to school or they're being sent home early because you've got this big river. So what happens to the children? How are you managing now? You've got a community hall, but tell us about what happens with the children.
During heavy rain in the morning, I usually stop my children from coming to school, especially the young ones, primary school, because there's a feeder road from Nangai to town. They have to cross that river, the creek. Imagine Sharon, when they're in school during 2 hours of heavy rain, and the teachers ask them to go back home. So crossing that flooded river, that flooded creek, it's not safe for them.
Does the school communicate with you? Do they call you up and say, Chotavini, we're sending your children home, please come and stand by the bridge?
Yeah.
Is there a bridge?
Just a small bridge, it's
Okay.
a creek. Yes, they do call us during time of heavy rain, so we have to come to school. If not, just keep our children stay in school.
Okay, thank you so much, Jyotivini. Suman, you're from a farming community. Vuniduidui, the whole Nasoni area is a huge sugarcane farming area. What was the worst cyclone experience for you?
The worst cyclone experience for me was Amy, which came in 2002.
Okay.
It affected all our sugarcane, vegetables, and we didn't have any source of income at that time.
Okay, so just to explain geographically, you're kind of in this flat sugarcane area. You've got the mountains and then you've got the river as well, right? So
Okay.
you're kind of getting the heavy downpour plus the river flooding, yes?
Yes,
So what did you do to organize your families? How do you organize if there's a cyclone or flood?
at that time we had to stay home because our farm was all damaged, vegetables damaged, and we didn't had any kind of income to survive our children and send them to school. So at upper land we planted some vegetables, and when it grew we sell to the market and send our children to school. And also at that time we didn't had any support from the government for our children to send to school and pay the school fees and also for foods. But one or two government donors helped us as our food supplies.
Coming back to the farming, so you immediately went and started planting new vegetable crops, obviously to feed your family as well as to generate income. For your sugarcane crop, 2002, How long did it take for you for the cane farm to properly rehabilitate?
It took about 2 to 3 years because all the canes were damaged and all the rubbish were in our farm. So we had to clear the farm, and some plants were damaged badly. So we had to replant that, and when we planted, we need fertilizer for it so that our cane and vegetables grow well.
And fertilizer is not cheap, is it?
Yeah, it's very expensive. So we had lot of problem for that.
So for 3 years you were
Yeah.
in a crop rehabilitation process for your main source of income, the cane, and then trying to make ends meet.
In order to make good farming,
Yeah.
so we have to at least wait for 3 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. At Tether, Bulileka Women's Club, you're predominantly market vendors. You've heard what Chotifini and Suman have talked about, like the 2002 cyclone. Any experiences, and what has been the impact of cyclones and floods on market vendors, on women like yourselves?
It's our plantation in the village. So our community consists of 44 families, and there are more than 72 students. And when the flood rises up to our plantation, it damages our crops and our vegetable plantation. So when ladies tried to renew it, it took them about 1 year or 3 months in cassava plantation. It takes them 3 months to renew their plantation because of the flood. So due to their marketing, they have to wait for that 1 year or 3 months for the cassava and 1 year for their vegetable plantation. And secondly, we have bridges. In the village of Mbulilaka, there are 2 bridges that they cross, the students crossing when they go to school. One is right up to Mbombale Indian School, and one is from Mbulilaka Secondary School. So when that the flood goes up to the bridge, the student won't go to school. They
So
have
it's
to
very
stay home.
similar to
Yes,
what
very similar
Nangai.
to Nangai.
And what you've just raised, very similar to what Suman has said, the
Yes.
period of waiting for the crop rehabilitation. What assistance have the women received, if any, and what do you do in between when you're waiting for the crops to grow, if market vending is your main source of
Actually,
income?
there's no assistance that comes from the government, but the thing there's to do is just to wait and replant the cassava so that they can get their crops and the plantation for the vegetables to come to the market.
And food sources, what happens to food?
Oh, sorry. For that, we have to wait for long, so we have to buy in the market.
So you're not selling in the market, but you are going to the market to buy.
buy.
And are you all finding that after cyclones and things, the prices go up at the market? Yeah. How much would you having to pay if it was like a bundle of cabbage or cassava?
Now we have to wait for it's $5 a bundle of cabbage.
$5 goes up to $5.
It cost about $5.
Yeah.
$5 for 50. Before we supply vegetables to the market, at that time we have to buy from the market.
Right. And Suman, I want to come back to you because you also said that, because farming, like with Ateda, you're growing crops as your main source of income. And this is obviously the money that you earn to pay the school fees. So did you have to stop your children from going to school?
No, we didn't have to stop because the school community know that we are facing problem, so they wait for the fees.
Is that the same kind of experience, Ateda?
We have to stop our kids from going to school.
Okay.
Because there's wooden bridge in the village, but the bridge is not ready to send our children to school because it is wooden, it's bad. So when they cross that bridge, they might fall down or something gonna happen to them, and the teachers won't know, and us parents won't know. when something happens to them in the bridge. So we don't send them to school.
Okay, it's with Women's Weather Watch on Radio with Pictures on Fem Talk 89 FM in Labasa. Very quickly to each of you, you've got an opportunity to make recommendations. Jotavini, what's your recommendation?
Thank you. My recommendation for my community is to have a proper drainage, good rain around the village, so that during heavy rains, all our crops are damaged, as Arteva and Suman have explained. It also happens to Nangai. So we have to wait for a long time to replant our crops, and that time we have to buy from the market. During heavy rain, not the flood only, but heavy rain we experience during the year. So my recommendation is to have proper drainage for the community, and secondly, to have a proper and safe evacuation center. Now we have a community hall in Nangai, but in my opinion, it's not safe for us, and it's not fit enough for the whole village. And I recommend, if we can improve on that evacuation center, to have a big and proper community hall. And at the moment, our community hall in Nangai, it's not complete. The ground floor, we still have to complete that. We've been using the
Because the foundations aren't very
the foundation
strong.
is very weak. During heavy rain or heavy wind, we can feel the community hall shaking, but it's not safe and secure for us. And secondly, the last one is to have a proper evacuation center in school for our children during that heavy downpour.
Okay, so Ateva, would that make sense to you that if the school provided the evacuation center for the children, otherwise they're not going to school
Yes.
until the bridges are improved, until all of that? What are your recommendations then?
My recommendation is that when students can't go to school like that, so when times when they go to school, the teachers will provide their accommodation or something like that in school. And the other thing is that we need to increase women's representation in decision making, to stop the digging of river gravel.
Okay, so the river gravel is an issue for you. Do you think that's what's worsening your vulnerability to flooding? You've got
Yes.
2 bridges, 2 rivers, and there's a lot of river gravel removal around
Yes.
Bulileka.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, and I just wanted to ask you and Suman, as far as crop rehabilitation, do you think there need to be new strategies? What you're seeing now, can there be improvements? Atela? In crop rehabilitation, should there be specific assistance to women who are farming crops?
Yes,
Yeah.
they should give assistance to them, because in that they have to feed their family, they have to bring money, financial problem in their families, they have to help in that.
Okay. Suman, from a cane farming perspective, a large farm perspective, you've experienced the 2002 cyclone, but also all the other ones and the flooding since then. If you were to change things, what would you improve?
I would improve the drainage. If we have proper drainage, then the flooding will not affect our crops and vegetables like sugarcane. If it damage the crops, it finds us very hard to renew our crops.
Okay. So some simple solutions like drainage. And finally, Salote, what are your immediate recommendations and what would be some of your long-term recommendations, given that your village, like others in Fiji, are facing the impact of rising sea level?
My recommendation is we have the seawall. And will be very, maybe for that short time, instead of shifting our villages or our houses to the top level.
This might sound like a silly question, but how high should the seawall be?
The seawall will be raised to 10 to 15
Feet. So
feet.
not like the fancy low-lying seawall, like
yeah.
solid seawall. Okay.
course, yes.
And in relation to relocation, what is your recommendation on relocation? Should they be relocated? Is there a cost involved in relocating?
Relocation will take more time and plenty money. We don't have any fund to do all the such things. Because we're staying in the village, we don't expect to relocate our village. That's why it's very hard for us.
Okay, that's been our Women's Weather Watch segment with Jotavini Vuanilotu, Ateda Keresoni, Suman Lata, and Salote Savu. After the break, Lucille, we'll be discussing economic and food security.
Thank you, Sharon. And a reminder that if you are in Suva, you can tune in to Fem Talk 89 FM Suva from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. all weekend. And Fem Talk 89 FM here in Labasa can be heard from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. on weekdays.